Hi, I'm Dr. Laurie Daly, and this is ECE 37, our final module. Yay! Module number 10. Welcome, and this is a shorter lecture, but I wanted to do a little bit of a summary and then of your textbook, and then talk about a couple notes that are important to me that the text didn't cover. But first, I thought this would be kind of a fun thing to put out here. As a matter of fact, I believe it may have been you, TJ, that put this up on our Facebook page, the differences between a boss and a leader. Was that you? I thought it was really cute, and so I thought I would start off by sharing that. The difference between a boss and a leader. A boss drives employees, whereas a leader coaches them. A boss depends on authority. The boss. A leader depends on goodwill. A boss inspires fear. A leader generates enthusiasm. A boss says I or me. A leader says we. A boss places blame for breakdown, and a leader fixes the breakdown. I thought that was really great. Thanks for sharing that. We want to be leaders, although many of us are bosses, and at home I like to think I'm the boss. Although we all know it's the Jack Russell Terrier named Dinky. Tells us what to do and when to do it. He's truly the boss of the house. All right, so this is chapters 5 and 6. I'm kind of doing a little bit of a summary of fitting. Actually, I'm mostly going to do chapter 6 because I want to get to the notes that I have that are outside of your text. My old school notes that are printed up. The old way of lecturing with highlights and everything. And tabs that have things marked off. Yes, it's true. I still do those. It's important to say that there's tension between what's possible and what's real, or the reality of situation. So on the one hand, we're moving towards a new paradigm of how we want to lead and how we want to interact, and the 3 R's and how we're implementing them, right? And we're reflecting on our practices at all time, not just individually, but also as a group. We're setting up reflection as part of our I would say daily life. Before you go to sleep at night, I hope you take a little time to reflect on what went down and what the highlights were, as well as what are some of the things you could make changes on. But I also hope on a weekly basis you take time to reflect where the children are learning, and also your interactions with other teachers and your coworkers. Sometimes all of a sudden you'll realize, you know, I was a little bit snitty with so-and-so. And you might not in the moment really even think about it because you're justified and you're in a hurry. But the minute you come back and you reflect and you have that sense of, maybe I should have, could have, would have, that's a good time to go clean that up. The sooner you clean it up, usually the better, although some instances need a little space of time. If you're really angry and heated, I'm a big fan of go to your corners, your respective corners, and come back. Sometimes a little space is a good thing, but too much time goes on, then more anger and animosity can be built. Yeah?
People harbor stuff, they kind of
get
resentful.
And then you start thinking, yeah, and another thing. And before you know it, it has really snowballed. So it's very important to reflect on that. And it's also important to reflect on this as a group. So I hope you're having weekly staff and faculty meetings where you can talk about what's gone on in that week and have conflict resolution and clean things up. And sometimes things take a little bit of time. And they might even take some one-on-one mediation. But it's never going to come together if you ignore it. We talked about that several modules ago. That's really easy to just avoid conflict and pretend it's not there. I don't see any conflict. No conflict going on here. But the truth is, if you don't deal with it, it will just get worse. You will harbor resentment, and before you know it, something will blow up that may not even seem like it's related, but it is. You took my snap peas out of the refrigerator, right? It had nothing to do with the snap peas. As a matter of fact, they probably would have openly shared them if they had thought about it, but they're really still mad about the fact that you took the credit for something that that person did, or whatever the issues are that come up. So the idea is that there's tension between what we want to have happen, the possibilities of what our programs are, and the reality of what our programs are. There's a space. Our relationships need to be built, and they need to be promoted, and they need to be sustained. We already know that. And this is especially important in environments that tend to foster isolation, meaning you're in your own classroom. It's really hard to get those relationships. We spend a lot of time talking about that. So again, reciprocal learning can only exist in a relationship. But I like the idea that they added 3 R's in addition to the 3 R's. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped something. Oh, we must ask how reflective practice develops, and we should, oh, yeah, this is important actually. Let me back up. We want to value questions more than we value answers. I touched on that last time, but that's a very important piece. If you take that from this module, to spend more time valuing questions than valuing answers. And even when we're in staff meetings, we tend to, oh, thanks for the answer to that. I mean, we tend to value and give credit to people when they come up with an answer to, or a solution to a problem. And I hope that you can spend a little more time valuing the questions that might bring you to possible solutions. There's always more than one solution to a problem. All right, so the extra 3 R's, I like this. Recreation, restoration, and reformation. And recreation could be exercise, something exhilarating, or it could also be relaxation. Whatever you need to get energy source. I know for me, there are times when I'm in the school year where I don't take a lot of time to recreate or recreate. I'm on full gear. I'm just going seriously 7 days a week for months. And then you get burnt out and you get exhausted. And then you get kind of snitty. And then you're kind of stale. That's what happens. So we want to take time to exercise and relax, get plenty of rest. Otherwise, when you come back after your weekend, you're burnt. Do what makes you happy. If you find that you love to do certain things and you can't remember the last time you did it, oh, I don't know what it is, needlepoint or playing the piano or going for hikes, that stuff that you used to do all the time before you got this job. If you're finding you can't even remember the last time you did it, there's a good chance that you're not taking time to recreate and take care of yourself or re-energize yourself. The children, they deserve it, and so do your coworkers. Sometimes a break is exactly what you need. And that brings on the second R, restoration. We need to restore ourselves. We need to reconnect with who we are. And not just as jobs, but as people. I know that when I was teaching, I was the director of the preschool, I really knew I needed to leave that job. The timing was just so, it was at a different place in my life. It was just really time for me to move on, and I was grieved over it because I had built my whole life around being the director of this preschool, and what next? And honestly, when I left that job, I found that I wasn't sure who I was. My persona was so enveloped in that job that I didn't have my own identity. The identity for me was that job. That wasn't healthy. I was in my 20s, and it was important. I'm so glad that I left when I did. I left on a high note, too, which always is a good thing. You don't want to get fired. You want to leave when they're begging you to come back, right? But it was important for me to realize, I'm so much more than just a job. I hope you can always keep that perspective. We're all working, and we love what we do, and we put our lives into it, and we try to do our jobs with excellence, but we're more than that. There's those ping pong balls, coming back to that object lesson again. Who are we as people? We need to restore. And reformation, we need to reform too. I try to do this certainly every couple years, if not every year. And one of the things that I found last year was that I had stopped exercising and I wasn't eating well because the job was just so overwhelming. And all of a sudden I woke up and I thought, wait a minute, where was I when I stopped running? I've been running since I was a kid. I mean, I love to run. Where was I when I stopped running? Well, I'm in a hurry, I got to get to this meeting, and then it happened a couple times a week, and then before I knew it, well, I won't run this week, I'll run next week. And then before I knew it, it had been even further, and then, oh, I didn't even buy new running shoes, and so I can't run with those shoes because that'll hurt my hip, or all of a sudden, the job had taken over. And so I had to reform myself and just say, wait a minute, if I don't make it happen, it won't happen. Same with eating habits. All of a sudden I realized I'm eating way too much fast food because where we live here, or where the campus is situated here in Clear Lake, we've got all kinds of fast food right out there on the corner. And it's very easy and it's cheap. There's this dollar menu, you blow right in, get food for cheap, and that we know it's not good for us. And so I decided I was going to reform, and I would start to exercise every day. It's certainly 5 days a week, if not 6. Take one day off to let my body rest a bit. But, and then I would eat vegetables. So when I get up in the morning, my old habit was I'd get up and I'd get sucked into the Yuba College vortex. You know what that is. I know you have your own vortex. Or is it vortex eyes? I don't know, vortexts, whatever it is, the plural of vortex. We all have them, the things that suck you in, and before you know it, you're enveloped, and there's, you know, you can't get out. You're in a black hole. And so I'd get up first thing in the morning, I'd go, you know, use the potty. Girl has to get up and go potty and get a cup of coffee, and then email, right into the vortex. I'd be gone, because there's always something. I literally have hundreds of emails every day, especially with the internet classes I teach. Oh, I'm at something like, let me think how many messages I saw the other day. It was like 5,000 messages in this class. This class. What are you going to do? Really? 5,000? I mean, just this class, seriously, this ECE 37 class. Like, okay, all right, get ready. So I realized that there's always, and it's not that I don't want to be there to help my students, and as I really am all about the students, and it's all about you, and I care about each and every one of you very, very much. And if I don't have a personal, you know, face-to-face relationship with you, you just need to know I think about my students a lot. But it was at the point where my health and well-being wasn't in good shape because of it. And so I had to make a decision. I'm not going to get up and get sucked into the Yuba College vortex and not take care of myself. So I hope that you all take some time for some reforming. Go home and take a look at what are the things that are healthy and need to stay, and what are the things that are not healthy and they need to go. They're out of here. So now when I get up, rather than getting sucked into the Yuba College vortex, that sounds horrible, but it is the way it was. I'm telling you, there's just stuff, there's always something, problems, fires, little things, that, not literal fires, but figuratively, there were things that needed to be dealt with, and they're pressing. But I found that it's not as pressing as you'd think, and as a matter of fact, I can really take care of myself. I get up now, I get some vitamin D with my husband. We purposely spend at least 20 minutes in the sun, so that I get some vitamin D, which is good for your all-around being. And we sit and talk. Wow, I have this husband that I can talk to. It's like, oh, what's your name? Hi, yeah, exactly. No phone. We don't answer the phone. We don't do the email. We literally just have coffee and hang out together. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just chill and hang out. Wow. And then, you know what I do? I still don't do my email. Nope. I go to the kitchen. Oh, I eat breakfast too. Huh. Never ate breakfast before. I don't have time for that. I got meetings and things. Well, it turns out it's really not good to skip breakfast. They've been telling us that for years, but who knew? They were right. So I not only eat breakfast, but then I set up vegetables for the entire day. I get all my little veggies. Anybody who knows me knows I have this little bag, and I put my carrots or my snap peas and my tomatoes and cucumber, or mushrooms, or whatever, you know, radishes. I have celery, whatever I'm into that day. I cut up all my little veggies and I put them in their little bags so that they're ready to go to work. That takes a good half an hour. Still haven't done email. Wow. The first few weeks it was like, I don't know. What if somebody might have an emergency? And I found out, no, it's actually okay. They know how to get a hold of me. If it's an emergency, people get a hold of you, and I haven't had any. So I'm getting up, taking care of myself, taking care of my nutrition, and I'm not eating the fast food. So that's what I mean about reformation. Go think about that. There are places in our lives, where we need to reform. Do it for yourself. 3 R's. So those 3 R's: recreation, restoration, reformation. Reforming. Why don't we do this? Well, first of all, I have to remind you that we talked about that Frary banking method, where I've mentioned it in several modules, where the teacher puts knowledge into the students and then wants to pull from the deposit and make a withdrawal from the bank account. The problem with that is that it doesn't take into account that every single person in your classroom has knowledge. You each come with your experiences. Experiences are a way of knowing. We don't value that in higher education. Often we think of the book smarts or whatever research, and that's it. But every single person in the classroom has valuable information. If we're co-creators, then we need to take the time to listen to one another. And that means we have to make space for all the voices to be heard. And the reason why we don't do that is, well, that means change. The way our classrooms are set up is you have your lecture, I'm the professor, I lecture, you're the students, you listen. Let's break out your notes, write down whatever it is I'm saying. Then I can say, what did I just say? Read it back to me. And someone's supposed to tell me because they took perfect notes. The problem with that is that it doesn't take into consideration that everybody in here has something that they could share that's valuable, that we could all learn from. So we need to create classrooms where all students are free to speak, knowing that their presence is going to be recognized and valued. Back to that idea of valuing people. That's messy. What if you all start talking at once or something? What if you start saying crazy things? How am I going to keep control? It's messy. It's hard. Well, wait a minute. What if you say something that I know is not lining up with my book smarts? I've got to keep you in line. Snap to. What if I can't get back the control of my classroom? What if it's like anarchy? The students refuse to sit down and listen to the professors. I don't know. But when voice is heard in a classroom, there's a lot of things that happen. Well, first of all, there's tension. There's that concept of tension again. There is a presence of tension because we're not all going to agree with each other. I've had students say some very colorful things in my classrooms, and I think, oh my. There's going to be conflict and pain, too. There will be conflict and pain, and we just want to avoid that at all costs. We already talked about conflict. No, thank you. But pain, we really want to avoid. There will be conflict, though. There will be pain. People will share painful things. I had a story just a couple weeks ago where someone shared just getting out of a domestic violence situation. I mean, the whole room was almost in tears. It's like, whoa, why she chose to share in that classroom, in that setting, I don't know, but what an honor that she would open up with us at that moment and share her life story. It was better than the lecture I had prepared, I'll tell you that. Actually, it made the points that my lecture were about to make with a way that was so concrete that I didn't have to go through all of my lecture in the same way. So are we willing to expect conflict and possibly even pain? If we're going to change the banking system, we're going to have to look at that. Are we willing to go there? Are we willing to opening up to new ways of knowing? Giving up the old ways of thinking? Because sometimes you got to get rid of, that's part of reformation. Sometimes you got to get rid of stuff too. I respect pain. I really do. And sometimes it's difficult for the professor because this is uncharted ground. I can't go to my lecture notes and it says, okay, now do this. I've had past experiences where I've had students share things, and in the moment I thought, wow, how am I ever going to get this back to where I need to go? And I think I've grown as a professor too. I had a student many, many years ago say something that was, I thought, completely offensive towards women. It was derogatory and offensive. And my immediate response was to run to the podium where I have authority and to just point out that that was unacceptable and derogatory and demeaning. And I realize now I didn't need to grab that authority back like I did. I felt like I was challenged in a way, that my authority was challenged. But truly, if we're co-creators of knowledge, then I shouldn't feel challenged. I mean, that's the thing about adult learners. You're here because you want to learn. Nobody's making you be here, I don't think. I think now what I would do differently is I'd say, oh, well, that's an unusual perspective. I'm going to ask if anybody would like to. I have some thoughts about that, but before I open up my mouth, I'd like to see if anybody else would like to share something. Ah! And I have a feeling if I had created space for voice, that could have been a very interesting dialogue. I shut it down. That is not okay. It was really offensive, actually. It was about Katie Couric being on television, of all people. And the comment was, I have to put it in context, the content was that women over the age of 30 shouldn't be allowed to be on TV because they were so unattractive. What? Hello? Have you been smoking crack before you came to class? Like, what? Come on, we all know that's offensive, right? But in my teaching, I got so freaked out about it because it was so off. Women over the age of 30, what?
That's when you get your boss.
It's ageism, it's sexism. I mean, there's just so many things that are conflict and pain. It's all right there. And I think I was so unsure of where it would go because this is uncharted ground. This is not, we don't have a lot of models to put this out there with and to line it up with. But it was easier to just take authority and say that's offensive towards women. It's, you know, sexist and ageist and whatever else I said. And I know my students are smart. I know they come with a lot of knowledge and experience, and I am willing to let your voices be heard. That doesn't work for everybody, by the way. There's some people who do not like that style of teaching. They find it somehow scary. It is scary. It's messy. Conflict and pain. It's a shifting of paradigms, and it's uncomfortable. It can bring discomfort. It can also create estrangement where there was none. Matter of fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that student ended up dropping.
Good thing.
Do you think it was something I said? I'm learning too, honestly, I'm learning too. I would handle it differently.
They obviously weren't ECE people. I mean, we would never say something like
No, I know, we ECE people, we're politically correct, we understand, and we're mostly women, a lot of women.
compassionate.
Yeah, you're right. And you know what, I teach a lot of different classes that sometimes bring in general education. And so I see, in some of my classes, I see the whole campus. And then there's other classes where clearly this type of a class is pretty much just early childhood educators because adult administration is unique to the CDTC matrix that we're all working our way towards so we can become leaders in the field, so to speak, although we already are leaders in the field. All right, so sometimes these discussions become charged emotionally. People can even have elevated voices, although I try to keep it to, let's just talk about this rationally, but it's possible. People get passionate about things and they get, louder in their volume. And sometimes we equate loud talking or interruptions with being rude and possibly even being threatening, especially if it's male. Oh, interesting. Is that sexism on my part? Would have I had said the same thing if that had come from a woman? Or, I don't know.
Depends on the woman.
It does depend, doesn't it? It depends. There's my answer. It always depends. I don't know. I'm asking questions. I said last module that it's about asking questions. But my other truth is if we're all emotionally shut down and we don't go to the deeper, richer arousal response, then will we have excitement about ideas? So there's this assumption in the world of education that to truly be intellectual, we must be cut off from our emotions. Right? You know what I'm talking about. Well, use your prefrontal cortex and disengage from the limbic section of your brain and you will not be emotional. And clearly, if you're emotional, you are unintelligent. Oh, come on, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard that, right? So where did that come from? The idea that to be intelligent is a lack of emotion.
A male?
What do you think about that, class? I'm opening it up for different points of view.
Just saying.
Just saying, right. Too funny. And look, she comes back to the podium. Hide behind the podium. Excuse me. Just bringing out the idea that I don't think one is showing a lack of intelligence because they have emotion. I don't think so at all. I think we can be passionate about what we're learning and we can have emotion behind it. And it can still be powerful and it can still have impact. I love this idea that if it comes from my heart, I can go anywhere with it. Do you know what I mean by that? If I'm really at the heart of what I value and what's important to me, then I can become intellectual, I can become emotional, I can be grounded, I can be fanciful, I can just go anywhere I want with it. Just a little something to think about. Somehow, there's a fear that if we allow our students to experience, that it invalidates the learning. I even say I teach experiential classes. Some of my classes are highly academic, ECE 3, a lot of lecture, some stories, but it's a heavy lecture class. I have those classes, highly academic, but I also have the experiential, and I even put it in quotes. My experiential classes, that would be something like the special needs class or the exceptional child. That is an experience that we come to. ECE 1C is the positive social emotional development. That's an experiential class. Oh yes, and that's right. My multicultural class, completely experiential. I have guest speakers, and it's an experience that we go through together, learning about culture and multicultural perspective and cultural competency. But somehow we're afraid that if we allow it to be experiential, that it's not academic. So my concern is if we don't bring in experiential learning, then we shut down. We're not going to advance our discussions, and it's not going to be a provocative topic. Let's see, what else do I want to say here? I am thrilled when the telling of experience links discussions or facts that are more abstract with the concrete. Sometimes it's the story that the student will tell that brings it all together. And that excites me because then there's the aha moment. And sometimes students are really eager and energetic to just openly discuss personal things. Sometimes they're not. I'm okay with that too. I'm always honored, though, when students are open to openly discussing things that are personal and pertaining to their life. There's I had a student at one time tell me that this is what she heard from her direct supervisor. I understand where you're at, but I don't have the patience. I wrote down this quote from my student. I don't have the patience or the time to invest in you right now. Oh. Can you believe a leader said that? Oh, you guys, oh, wait a minute, maybe, the boss said that, not a leader. Good point, TJ. Let me repeat this back. To me, this was like being punched in the stomach. I had a visceral response to this. I understand where you're at, but I don't have the patience or the time to invest in you right now. Whoa! That's against everything I've been teaching you this semester. I have the patience, I have the time. I want to understand where you're at, but I want to even understand it better. Because truly, if that person understood where that worker was at, they would have found the patience and the time and invested it. The meaning there is you don't matter. I don't value you. I don't want to be connected to you. Ouch. So, wow, I don't even remember who said that. I do remember the student, but I can't remember which boss, which is good, because names are not good. All right, so we have a fear of change. We often want to reject it. And there's like a lot of reasons for that, but I've got three main things. I'm looking up at the clock to see where I'm at. I'm in pretty good shape here. Teachers are afraid to change their system for a lot of reasons, and we're afraid we're going to lose respect. If I truly make my classrooms open voice and a shared experience of reciprocal learners where we're co-creating our knowledge, and I'm not up here and you're down here and we're more equal, well, I could lose respect. My students may not respect me. That's a valid fear. I mean, it's possible. So I think that fear of losing the students' respect has discouraged many professors from trying new teaching techniques and practices. Oh, there's this writer, her name is Bell Hooks. I think she's just phenomenal. And she's written a book called Teaching to Transgress, which was a game changer for me, where she is looking at a lot of different teaching paradigms. And one of the things she says is that she tells the students not to confuse informality with the lack of seriousness and to respect the process. Let me repeat that. She tells her students not to confuse the informal experiences, the experiential nature of her classes, with a lack of seriousness. Again, it's as if you're emotional, you can't be intelligent at the same time. So if we're experiential, then I'm not serious.
Aren't emotions what separates us from like a computer or what?
Yes, exactly.
Who wants a preschool administrator that has no emotion? You want someone that's passionate about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And compassionate.
And compassionate, right, right.
You need someone that's gonna
You can hear what they're
care
saying?
about the children in the program.
I'm sorry, what?
You're going to want someone that's actually going to care about the children in the program, not just their job.
It's another day at work.
Right.
You don't want that.
So I think the idea of respect the process is important. And I do say that in my experiential classes. I say, we're going on a journey together, and this isn't going to look like my other classes. But I promise you, it'll be worth it. Can you just give me grace and come with me? Let's do this, and I'm going to go with you on the journey. So that was, number one was that teachers and professors are worried that they'll lose respect. And then they return to that traditional way of doing things. As they want the students to listen. I personally have found that just traditional ways are not necessarily respected by students, nor does it mean that they listen any better. I've kind of come to that conclusion that they're not necessarily connected. The second reason why we're afraid of change is that we tend to hang on to the past. We're creatures of habit, and it's hard to move forward when you're hanging on to the past. And it somehow legitimizes everything that we've done before when we hang on to the past. Yeah, and history does repeat itself. And we are creatures of habits. We like our classrooms the way they have always been. It's predictable, it's safe. Pain and conflict, predictability and safety. Pain and conflict, predictability and safety. I mean, you can see why predictability and safety looks pretty good. And then third is that not only are we afraid we're losing respect, but we're afraid that we're losing power and control. I would say particularly new teachers are struggling for power and control. The longer I've been teaching, the longer I've been doing this professor thing, the easier it is to recognize that I'm not going to lose power or control. That's because I'm giving it to you. I'm not losing it, I'm giving it. You have power, you have control. Ta-da! It's actually freeing. I talked about that in the last module. It's really very, very freeing. And I know when I first started teaching, the idea of moving out from behind the podium like that was very scary. Getting close to the students was like, oh, so, I don't know, it's power. And then also, it's kind of easy to just kind of be lazy and lean over the podium. I remember thinking, I feel more in control when I'm standing behind this. And then I also remembered deciding that that wasn't what was important to me. What was more important to me was relationship with my students, and that you had voice. And that we are an institution that's creating change. Oh, I wrote number 4. I wrote this, I forgot I had written that. That also sometimes we're afraid of losing time. It'll take too much time to listen to what they have to say. I have notes I have to get through. What if I don't get through my notes?
You run smoother when you take the time to listen, though. You take that 5 minutes to hear them. It saves you a lot of time in the bickering and not wanting to do their job.
It's true. The stitch in time saves 9 or whatever. Or maybe I don't have the energy to do that. Or I'm too busy. Whatever the reason. I'm just thinking if we really are creating communities of learners where we're all learning together, co-creating our knowledge, then we're learning along with the students, and education is a practice of freedom. That's kind of out there. It's a practice of freedom. And so that conservative banking system is the opposite. It's the antithesis of that freedom. Sometimes we think of freedom as lack of rules and anarchy, and I don't see it that way. I don't see it as an interruption at all. I see it as an indication of learning. Okay, what do I want to say before I wrap this up? I'm thinking. Oh, I know. I wanted to give you 2 different definitions, just so that you're aware of them. I talked about pedagogy, the pedagogical pedagogy. I'll spell it P-E-D-A-G-O-G-I-C-A-L. Pedagogical. Pedagogy. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a fun word to say. I highly recommend you just slip it into regular conversation a couple times this week and see what people do. And I use that word a lot because it's the study of the process of teaching. It's why do we teach the way we teach, the methods that we teach. And it's the strategies of instruction. But really, it's about teaching children. The word pedagogy is about teaching children. And Paulo Freire, the same guy who did the banking method, came up with this concept of critical pedagogy, which is a term I laid out not too long ago, meaning that we are critical and we think about why we teach the way we teach. I really like that Freire guy. Wonderful theorist, some, I would say, provocative theory, groundbreaking. Bit feminist too. I'm a feminist at heart, I must confess. So he referred to this method of teaching adults as critical pedagogy, but there's also another term, and to be honest with you, I find it a little harder to pronounce, but andragogical. So andragogical. That's a hard one to say like 5 times fast. Andragogical. I can't do it. Pedagogy, I could do really fast. But andra, A-N-D-R-A, and then gogical, G-O-G-I-C-A-L. And that's a theory of adult learners, education of adult learners. So pedagogy is about the theories that we do when we implement them with children. Although Freire said critical pedagogy was about adult learners. But there's another term that's come into being in the last, 20, 30 years, that's specifically for adult learners. And it's contrasted with the children's learning methods of pedagogy. So there's a couple different differences. Like one key difference is that adults are not the same as children. Maybe you noticed. The idea is that the adult learner has to be self-motivated. I can try to motivate you to learn, but truly you come with either you're motivated to learn or you're not. And you can't make that happen. Where children, we can really inspire them. We can pull out glitter or whatever we have to do, right? To get them, glitter works. Sometimes it works with adults too. So I see that there's a high connection between pedagogy and andragogy. But I want you to be aware of the fact that there are different terms, and that one is referring to adult learners and educating adults, and the other is referring to children and educating children. And as educators of young children, we engage in pedagogy. Although maybe you engage in andragogy too. So the adults need to be self-motivated to learn and shouldn't be treated the same as children. So really there should be different techniques to a certain degree. Also, the instructor's kind of off the hook if someone doesn't learn. If there's a failure, it's not on the back of the instructor like it is with your regular K through or preschool through 12th grade. If the children aren't learning, we just say the teacher is the failure. You obviously didn't reach the child or whatever. Whereas this type of theory, it puts it on the adult learner. It's not so much the instructor's failure, which I like. All right, so I just wanted to throw that out there so you were aware that there were two different terms. And adults need to be motivated in order to learn. So hopefully we can help motivate each other in the co-creative learning environment. But honestly, if you're working with someone who's not motivated, it's really difficult to have that kind of reciprocal learning environment, right? So hiring is very important. Got to hire the right people, because once they're in there, if someone's not motivated, it can really turn down the mood. Those mirror neurons that I talked about last module kick in and it's negative. Okay, so what do I want to say here? We want to build relationships, in summary, that lead to reciprocal learning and critical reflection. And hopefully we're all working towards solidarity, meaning the same goals and the purposes and passions are similar, and that would be to help children learn. And we want relationships and partnerships that are collegial, meaning that we get along well. And I love that, the term of genuine enjoyment among coworkers, where you really enjoy each other's company. That's hard to do, but it can happen. And when we do this, we create space for exploration and we engage in a journey together. So it's the experiential journey that we're on together. All right. I like this poem. It's on page 75 in your text. And I'll end with this. Go to the people, learn from them, live with them, love them, start with what they know, build with what they have. But the best of leaders, when the job is done, when the task is accomplished, the people will say, we have done it ourselves. So I'm going to end on that note. I want to wish you all the best of luck on your final exam coming up in this class. I hope you do really well. And this is the end of Module 10. I've really enjoyed teaching this course and getting to know you all better. I hope you enjoyed these video lectures. Thank you.